The moment Trevor Noah took his seat across from Kelly Clarkson, the studio already felt different, tighter, heavier, charged with an energy no one could quite name yet. The lights were warm, the band had just finished the intro music, and the audience was still buzzing with applause when Kelly flashed her signature smile and leaned forward, cue cards in hand. "So, Trevor," she began brightly, "you've been everywhere lately. New projects, new tours, new opinions. The internet can't stop talking about you." The audience laughed lightly. Trevor smiled back, polite and composed, his posture relaxed, hands folded neatly in his lap. "The internet never stops talking," he replied calmly. "That's kind of its job." Kelly chuckled, but there was a flicker in her eyes, something sharper beneath the friendliness. "True," she said, nodding. "But some of those conversations lately have been intense, especially the ones about your comments on celebrity culture and accountability." The temperature in the room shifted, almost imperceptibly. Trevor's smile softened, but his eyes sharpened with focus. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I talk about systems, power, responsibility. People hear names, but I'm talking about structures." Kelly glanced down at her card, then back up. "But when people hear those comments, they feel targeted. Some fans feel you've crossed from commentary into judgment." A few murmurs rippled through the audience. Trevor leaned back slightly. "Calling out harmful systems isn't judgment, it's awareness. There's a difference." Kelly tilted her head. "But when you're someone with influence, don't you think your words carry weight that can hurt people personally?" Trevor paused. The pause itself felt loud. Cameras zoomed in just a little closer. "Words always carry weight," he said quietly. "That's why silence is heavy too." The audience went silent. Kelly blinked, clearly not expecting that response. She shifted in her chair, trying to keep the tone light. "I just mean, sometimes people want comedy, not lectures." Trevor smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Comedy has always been a lecture," he said. "It just wears a joke as a disguise." A few audience members clapped, hesitant at first, then louder. The band members exchanged looks. Kelly's smile stiffened. "Okay, but when people come on this show, we try to keep things uplifting. Positive. People are tired, Trevor. They don't always want heavy conversations." He leaned forward now, elbows on his knees, voice calm but firm. "Respectfully, Kelly, being tired isn't the same as being allowed to ignore reality." The room felt like it shrank. A producer off-camera made a small hand motion, signaling to steer the conversation. Kelly noticed, but didn't stop. "Do you think," she asked, voice more serious now, "that sometimes your delivery feels condescending to people who are just trying to live their lives?" Trevor's jaw tightened for a split second. "Do you think asking people to think critically is condescending?" he asked back. A sharp intake of breath from the audience. Kelly hesitated. "I think there's a line between inspiring and talking down." Trevor nodded slowly. "And I think that line gets used to protect comfort more than truth." Now the tension was undeniable. No music. No laughter. No chatter. Just silence and two people staring at each other across a coffee table. Kelly crossed her legs, trying to regain control. "This isn't supposed to be an argument," she said. "I'm not arguing," Trevor replied. "I'm responding." Kelly sighed. "You see how this feels, though, right? People tune in for connection, not confrontation." Trevor looked around the studio, at the audience, the cameras, the bright lights, the smiling faces frozen in anticipation. "Connection without honesty is just performance," he said. The words landed heavy. A man in the front row whispered, "Oh damn," under his breath. Kelly's voice tightened. "So you're saying this show is fake?" Trevor's eyes snapped back to her. "I didn't say that. But if every conversation has to be comfortable to be allowed, then it's not a conversation, it's a script." The silence was now thick enough to feel physical. Kelly's tone shifted. "This is my show, Trevor. And I'm your guest," he replied. "Not your echo." Gasps. A few claps. Someone laughed nervously. For a moment, it looked like Kelly might laugh it off, pivot the conversation, bring in the band, change the energy, but something in her expression hardened. "You don't get to come on here and lecture me about authenticity," she said. "We've created a platform for millions of people to feel seen and heard." Trevor stood slightly straighter in his chair. "And I respect that. But feeling seen doesn't mean being challenged is wrong." Kelly shook her head. You're turning this into something it doesn't need to be. Trevor's voice dropped lower, steadier. No. I'm refusing to turn it into something it shouldn't be. Another long silence. You could hear a camera motor hum. Kelly forced a small smile. Okay. Let's reset. But Trevor didn't move. Didn't smile. Didn't nod. Kelly, he said calmly, with respect, if the only acceptable version of me on this couch is the agreeable one, then I shouldn't be on this couch. The room froze. Kelly opened her mouth, then closed it. Trevor inhaled slowly, then added, I don't do performance conversations. I do real ones. And if that's not welcome here, I won't pretend. The audience was split, some clapping softly, some sitting in stunned silence, some whispering to each other. Kelly stared at him, visibly shaken, trying to find the right words. And that's when Trevor placed his hands on the arms of the chair and shifted his weight forward, his body language signaling a decision had already been made, before anyone else in the room realized what was coming. The movement was subtle at first, just a shift in posture, but it sent a ripple through the studio. Trevor Noah's chair scraped softly against the floor as he stood. The sound felt louder than it should have, sharp and final, cutting through the silence like a blade. Kelly Clarkson looked up at him, eyes wide with disbelief. Trevor, she started, her voice catching slightly, half host, half human in that moment. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture dramatically. He simply stood there, calm, composed, grounded in a quiet certainty that felt heavier than any shouting ever could. This isn't anger, he said softly. This is boundaries. The audience erupted into a mix of gasps, whispers, and scattered applause. Some people stood instinctively, unsure whether they were witnessing a powerful moment or a live television disaster. The band members froze, hands hovering over instruments, waiting for a cue that never came. Kelly stood up too, her chair sliding back. We can talk this through, she said quickly. We don't need to do this on air. Trevor met her eyes. That's the thing, he replied gently. It's always on air. Everything is on air. The smiles, the jokes, the safe questions, the careful silence. This is just the honest version. The words landed quietly, but they hit hard. Kelly shook her head. You're turning a conversation into a spectacle. No, Trevor said. The spectacle is pretending tension isn't real when it is. A producer's voice crackled faintly through someone's headset. Stagehands shifted nervously. One of the camera operators hesitated, unsure whether to stay focused or pull back. Trevor reached for the microphone clipped to his jacket and calmly unclipped it. The soft click echoed through the studio like punctuation. I respect you, he said, looking directly at Kelly. I respect your platform. But I won't shrink myself to fit a version of comfort that doesn't allow honesty. Kelly's voice trembled. So you're just going to walk out? He nodded once. Yes. The simplicity of the words stunned the room more than any dramatic speech could have. He turned toward the audience and gave a small, respectful bow of his head. Thank you for listening, he said. Even when it's uncomfortable. Some people clapped. Others sat frozen. A few wiped their eyes, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It felt like something raw, something human, something unscripted in a world built on scripts. Trevor took a step toward the stage exit. Kelly called out after him, her voice breaking through the silence. This didn't have to happen like this. He paused. Didn't turn around immediately. When he did, his expression wasn't angry. It was tired. Honest. Human. Some things only happen like this, he said quietly, because they were never meant to be comfortable. And then he walked. Each step felt slow, deliberate, heavy with meaning. The cameras followed him down the stage, past the band, past the glowing lights, past the carefully constructed world of daytime television. A stagehand opened the door. Bright hallway lights spilled in. The door closed behind him. The studio fell into stunned silence. No applause. No music. No laughter. Just shock. Kelly stood in the center of the stage, frozen, one hand resting on the arm of her chair. For a long moment, she didn't speak. She didn't move. She just breathed. Finally, she turned toward the audience. Well, she said quietly, voice unsteady, that was real. Nervous laughter rippled through the room, but it couldn't break the tension. The band leader looked at her, silently asking for direction. She swallowed. Let's take a quick break, she said. We'll be right back. The cameras cut. But the moment didn't end. Backstage, the hallway buzzed with chaos. Producers whispered urgently. Staff members rushed between rooms. Phones were already out. Clips were already being uploaded. Social media was already igniting. Trevor walked calmly through it all. No security. No entourage. No drama. Just a man walking away from a moment he refused to fake. Outside the studio, reporters were already gathering. Someone shouted his name. Another camera flashed. He stopped briefly at the door, took a breath of fresh air, and looked up at the sky. Later that night, the internet exploded. Clips of the confrontation went viral within minutes. Hashtags trended worldwide. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Some people praised him. Finally, someone who won't perform for comfort. That was dignity, not drama. He chose integrity over airtime. Others criticized him. Disrespectful. Unprofessional. Too sensitive. But one thing was undeniable. Everyone was talking. On the Kelly Clarkson show, the segment never fully aired in its original form. Edits were made. Cuts were stitched. Tensions softened for broadcast. But the raw footage leaked anyway. Unfiltered. Uncut. Uncomfortable. And it changed everything. Talk shows debated it. Podcasts analyzed it. News outlets framed it as a television meltdown or a moment of truth, depending on which side they were on. Kelly later addressed it in a monologue. "I respect Trevor," she said. "Even when we disagree. Sometimes conversations don't end neatly. Sometimes they end honestly." Trevor posted one simple line on social media. "Peace isn't silence. It's alignment." No explanation. No rant. No interview tour. Just that. And somehow, that said everything. Because the story wasn't really about a walk-off. It wasn't about a talk show. It wasn't even about an argument. It was about a moment when two worlds collided. Comfort versus truth. Performance versus authenticity. Silence versus voice. And in front of millions of people, one man chose not to perform. He chose to walk.